So welcome back to a brand new podcast episode of Family Seasons by Coach Teia and my co-host, Mr. Damian Dalcour.
All
Damian, are you
right.
there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here. Well, thank you for having me on again, Miss Tia.
Well, you are quite welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Today, we're in season 5. This is 2021, and we're excited about all the things that are happening, in this new podcast season. We have a lot of really great topics to discuss. We have great guests that we're planning to bring on. Today, however, I wanted to talk about something that, just because of something that happened, a situation that happened in our country on yesterday, which happened to be Wednesday, the 6th of 2021. We had a serious uproar in the Capitol building, and so one of the things that was very disheartening to me was, of course, seeing it all happen and seeing seeing people just being at their worst and just doing all sorts of things. But what touched me, expressions that my own daughters had on their faces as they watched the television, and so I just felt the need to come on and do a special podcast episode about teaching our kids how to be resilient, teaching them about grit, and then teaching them how to accept defeat. So thank you so much, Damian, for saying yes. I know it's kind of quick notice, but I felt like this podcast definitely needed to be out there.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'm be delighted to interject my thought processes into helping people have a better understanding as this may apply to their lives.
That's true. So as I was saying, just watching everything happen, I actually was not aware of what was going on until my oldest daughter came in, and she was like, "Mom, do you see what's happening on television?" And so she had already she had already seen it, and I don't know, because she's in class, and so possibly one of the students brought it up or something. But nevertheless, we spent most of the day just watching and talking about it, and I'm trying to get their understanding, talking to them about it, and we had strong discussions about this, so much that went on. And when I saw it, what I felt basically was the fact that that's the result of a person that did not accept defeat well, and as a result, created an entire issue that resulted in a total riot. As some people say, that it was a total riot because of the destruction and the hatred and all of that. And so nevertheless, I wanted us to talk about, and I have just 8 tips that I want us to discuss as far as how do we teach our children about resilience.
Mm-hmm.
What do we teach them about grit? And then are we teaching our children to accept defeat or to get angry when we don't win? And so the first thing that the first tip that I have is to teach your children to accept defeat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What's your take on that? When I say teaching your children to accept defeat, what's your take on that?
Well, this is the thing. T, I always want to speak from my standpoint.
Right.
A winner knows that he can't win them all, but he sure hates to lose. That's what I always say.
Right.
Teaching your kids at an early age, or even with yourself, knowing that winning is not always all there is. Sometimes you have to lose to know your true place in the race. What the world experienced yesterday is really not a factor of winning or losing, but a moment to reflect on where we really are. I've viewed several protests, and what I've noticed that when they use excessive force, that was due to the fear that may have loomed within the crowd with the black people. But yesterday, we seen far more looting and vandalism caused with no black people. But then too, there was no resistance. There was no tear gas. There was no rubber bullets. There was no, the people who went to jail went to jail for the curfew. So,
right.
In a way, we have some things that we as a race that we won. But then too, sometimes they just don't want to give us the title as winners, just like this man has really lost. He's lost.
Right.
They not willing to accept that. So with me, man, if it comes down to me and they can't accept my loss, I don't want to be a winner. If
Exactly.
y'all can't see that I've lost this, and y'all gonna come up here and tear it up and act like this, really, I hate I represented y'all. I hate I represented y'all. If that's the
Exactly.
times we got to ask ourselves, do we really want to win?
And I think without a doubt, because when we're teaching our children that defeat is a part of life. I mean, losing is a part of life. I mean, our winners understand that there is there's a loss on the other side. As you just said, you're not going to win all the time. And so when we teach our children, I think this is important. This is vital to teach our children that you've got to accept defeat.
Right.
Defeat is okay. Does that mean that that your standards are not up to par? That is this or is that? No, that's not necessarily what it means. Is that you didn't win.
Right.
It means that the other person or the opponent, that they got more votes, or they got a higher score, or whatever the case is. But it's so important right now to teach our children to accept the defeat, be okay with it. And that rolls right into number 2, where don't allow the temper tantrums or the bullying or whatever happens. As a parent, when you lose, and I can look at my own daughters and talk about this, when you lose or when things don't turn out the way you wanted, for you to to just throw a fit or just act all out like we saw yesterday, that is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. It's never been cute, even when my children were younger, to just watch them just throw themselves on the floor and just holler and scream because they didn't get their way. I'm not necessarily that type of parent.
Right.
In my case, you're going to get up. We're not going to do that. There is a healthier way of you being disappointed, but temper tantrums, throwing stuff, fighting, calling names, bullying somebody just because you lost, that is not acceptable in my home, and it should not be acceptable in any of the homes, of our listeners right now, because it's going to create chaos.
Right. And I always say what you allow is what's going to continue.
Exactly.
And some young parents think that, I can't whoop my child because I didn't get a whooping. Well, in the Bible it says if you spare the rod, you hate the child. So as for me, I got my butt toe up as a child, like every day. And I'm a result of that today. So in a way, I'm grateful for that, because I understand that I got that out of love. Now, for those who don't get that type of punishment, they go out there to see how the world can punishment. You get police brutality, you get thrown in prison for something that you really didn't do. You get, stereotype for being at the wrong place at the wrong time because you had on a gold chain and you had braids on your head. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like these tantrums will too help you in those situations, because you've already been deemed as something. Let's not make it worse. So it is, and it starts at the young age.
Too many parents, I've seen it, and I've been working with children for a very, very long time. And so many parents, unfortunately think that it's really cute, and, they're acting out. And I understand, to an extent, I definitely understand it. However, when you start seeing that, and that goes into, the third tip is to, is redirecting, redirecting the selfishness, redirecting the unwanted behavior, whatever it is, you redirect it, because in the long run, your child will not always be a child. At some point, your child will be out in this world, and they must learn how to adhere to, the rules and the laws of the world. That's just the way it goes. So, when I'm raising my daughters, when starting out really young as babies, when I felt, okay, that's a bit much, we don't do the temper tantrums and all that. I'm going to let you express yourself. But as far as you're getting upset and you're going to go fight somebody or throw something, we don't do that. That's not, because see, in the world, later on, when your boss tells you that, that you're fired, or tells you that you didn't do a job correctly, you can't wild out on that boss.
No.
When you lose an election, or when you lose a race, or lose whatever the case is, you can't get upset and wild out on the world or the country, or get mad with people. That's not healthy behavior. And so redirect that, because you're saying that it's all about me. It's all about me. I
Mm,
matter the most. And redirect that. You have to really be able to be the parent to turn that around and say, you know what, this is not the type of behavior that I want to see, you know, in another adult. So I'm not going to allow it in my child right now.
right. And I mean,
Before,
go ahead with your next
no, no, no,
bullet.
you can go, no, go on. Go on
Yeah,
and
I
elaborate.
just say, you're right, Tia. That is a good point. You have to be able to keep those emotions under control. I always talk about emotional versus logical because I'm not an emotional person. So I don't let my emotions overrule my intellect. So, I need time to think of a logical response, that will depict a more suitable behavior for whatever the circumstances may be.
Hmm.
So you do. Your children are a direct reflection of the parents. So whatever I see in your children, I'm not gonna blame them. I'm gonna blame you because you taught them. All their
Exactly.
all their all their actions are inspired by you. And sometimes you can see a lot about a child, and know the parent before you even see them. Just off how your child is very manable, or your child is this is that. So I knew the parent before I knew the parent through the children.
Exactly. That has always been the case. And like I said, just in life, that has always been the case. Before I met the parent, actually, indirectly I did meet, because when I meet the kid or meet the child, then I know, okay, then this is what to expect from the parent. And so, the fourth tip is, teaching them to respect. And that's, respecting, respecting themselves,
Hmm.
respecting authority, respecting, their family, the community,
Right.
their workplace, their school. Just the value of respect. And that's what, when I looked at so many of the the pictures and all the things that was going on yesterday, just such a lack of respect,
Right.
just such a, just,
Right.
the ultimate lack of respect. And you see that not just in what happened yesterday, but just in our world on a daily basis. So much disrespect. You hear so many teachers complaining that, students, they can't, tell students what to do because, there's so much disrespect there. And
Right.
unfortunately, it starts in the home where the parent
Hmm.
says, well, you don't have to listen to that teacher, or you don't have to pay attention, or you don't have to do that. And so then you get these issues. Same thing, with our police officers. I understand that not all our officers are the best, or that they have, the best intention, but it still goes back to the respect.
Right. And
It starts with respect.
and
Go on.
what we witnessed yesterday, there was no respect. And you
None.
got to understand there were veterans out there. I'm a veteran. You have certain people that just they put everything aside to focus on this man losing this race. That their
Right.
country, their dignity, their morals. From a place which is founded to bring the people's voice together. They went and just tried to destroy it. And they came with it.
Exactly.
They came with the intent of doing harm. Some of them had weapons and they were breaking out glasses and they were sitting in elected officials' offices. I mean, really? So, what you have to sit
Just
back and
total disrespect. Exactly. Just to see that, like I said, it's so disheartening to see that, because such a lack of respect, for positions and offices, just total. But that stemmed from somewhere. Where did that come from? And that's why, as parents, we
so,
have to start in our home right now.
I'm gonna tell you where I've concluded that hate comes from. Hate is stemmed from seeing someone else have things that you can't have. I think that's where it all starts.
Exactly.
So you
Exactly.
line
That's
it
it.
all up why you hate him and you don't even know him. So hate is and you know what's funny about it? A lot of these laws and stuff that are inspired, everybody benefits from them. And the same people
Exactly.
that's out there tearing up the nationals, place of meeting for their voice is where a lot of this stuff they're gonna benefit from. That's what I don't like.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I know, and that's why, like I said, this starts at home. If we start right now at our dinner tables tonight, right now, today, as you're listening to this podcast, make a decision that today is a day that you go over these tips and make sure that, in your home and your family, that, with your child, that, you're on the right track. And of course, we know our kids can still get out and do things that, we have not taught them or encouraged them to do. But our job is to teach them, and as God says, teach them, train them up in the way that they'll go. And then, you know what, as they get older, they're not going to depart from it. It's still going to be instilled in them. So when I see adults acting out, my first thought is, okay, what's in there? You know, what was instilled in them? What was placed there? And so when you see the hatred and you see, you know, just being so disrespectful and so angry and not able to accept the defeat, where did it come from? That comes from somewhere. I don't believe that it happened overnight. I believe that if you back up, you will see, you'll see that there's a generational thing in so many ways that's exactly what it is.
Right. And that's true. I know you like to talk about that word resilience, and what I think it means, it's it's an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. Now, what we talking about right here, how you don't like to accept to lose. What do you think them protesters? Do you think they won? They lost. They was not successful at attempting to do something they had no clue that they was gonna even do. They had no order. They had no structure. Even the president told them in the tweet, "Come on down. It's gonna be wild." You know
exactly.
I saw,
and that and that's it.
Right. So now, how do they accept y'all lost? Because they went on like 2 hours later after deliberating and said, "Yeah, he is gonna be the president." So now what y'all gonna do?
It's still the same. It didn't change the result. And that, talking about resilience, that leads me into my fifth tip about showing them how to be resilient, how to have grit. And that, as you said, the resilience is about how do we recover quickly? Okay, you lost.
Right.
Okay, you lost that game. You lost that election. You lost that, whatever that is that you lost. You lost something that was really important to you or something valuable. It didn't work out. In other words, it did not work out. So then how the resilience, we have to teach them, okay, so the reality is that you really did lose. We acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to acknowledge that. This is the situation. Okay, so now here we go. With my daughters, okay, so it didn't work out. It didn't work out like you wanted it to be. Maybe you applied for this thing and you didn't get accepted or whatever the situation is. So how do we recover? How do we build that resilience? We build it by letting you understand and know that, this is not the end of the world. You are going to recover. You have to recover because it's all a part of the natural process of life. You are not going to win. You're not going to always be accepted. You are going to be denied. You won't always get, the high remarks that you want. That's the part of life. But you've got to learn to say, okay, you know what? This is a learning experience. Let me learn what I need to learn from this experience. Let me move on. That's the part of being resilient. Let's teach our children to be resilient because we know in life you've got to be resilient. If not, once again, the reflection of what we saw yesterday. Mm-hmm. Just total wilding out because why? You didn't get your way.
Right.
It didn't work out.
That's true.
And this cannot be the way of life. You can't go and destroy your employer's office because you didn't get that promotion or you didn't get the job or that's just not the way life works.
That's true.
You've got to be able to walk away. You've got to be able to walk away and say, okay, it didn't work out.
That's real talk to you. I deal with that in my life. Man, I ain't never forgot where I came from. And you know what's funny? I very seldom share it with people. Man, but you know what? I take it with me. So I always have me something to open up and say, hey man, you had it way worse than you do now. And I close it back up and I can keep moving. And this is what this is right now. That's our history now. Take that. Take what you saw, and every now and then get to a place where you say, you know what? Let me take a peek at where we was, and then close it back up and say, hey, now we ain't trying to go back there no more.
And that's that grit. That's the courage to say. That's what I mean when I say grit. That's the courage to say, okay, you know what? Okay, this is what we learned. This is what we got out of it. Now we're going to move forward. Now we're going to take that experience or take that situation and we're going to make the best out of it. When we teach our children to be resilient, we teach our children to have grit. We teach them that defeat is okay. It's a part of life. We raise well-rounded children. We raise children that will someday be, the owner of a company, or will someday, be the president of the United States, or be a leader, whatever the case is. But when they learn it now as children, they're better off in the world later on. And that's what we're trying to, that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is just being able to share these tips, because when I see adults acting like this, that's a reminder that, okay, we have to go back to the drawing board. We need to go back to the dinner table and make sure that our children are getting these lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6, I would say that the tip number 6 is don't over shelter our kids or over protecting them, because the bottom line is that, as much as I love my daughters, I want to make sure that they're getting it, that they're understanding. Why did I let them watch the television? Why did I, let them be okay with watching, social media? Now, of course, there are limitations, and we did turn it off at a certain time, but I wanted them to see what's really going on. I want them to see that so that they don't repeat that, or so they don't act out like that, and to show them and teach them as a lesson, hey, this is not the way you express yourself because you're angry. This is not okay. This is not acceptable.
Right.
And that rolls into the tip number 7, exposing them to reality.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be exposed, to what's really, we need our children to be exposed to what's really going on in the world. Now, you as a parent, you set the parameters as far as what's too much and what's not enough and things such as that. But there are things that it's important to make sure that our children are being exposed to what's really happening in the world. One of my things, and that I come from a 2-parent home. We had a great family, and my dad was there, mom was there. But the thing about it, the issue that I have, and I've talked to my siblings about this, is that we were really sheltered. There were so many things that we didn't understand, that we didn't know was happening in the real world, because we were so protected. And not until we got out there, in high school, I mean, not just in high school, but middle school and school, then we began to see that, okay, the world is a little different than our family home. I know, for example, I didn't know that, I didn't know so many things. I didn't know that some kids didn't have fathers in the home until I was talking about it one day at school. And, little did I realize, okay, that some of my friends didn't have their dads, didn't even know who their dads were. And so, I'm grateful for the way that I was raised. But like I say, the flip side of it is that, you don't want to over shelter or over protect your children from reality. Let them know that this is really out here. There are people that are not good people in the world. There are people that will cause you harm. And so as a result, this is what you do to protect yourself. But this is how, what we do in the world, how we do in our home. We're going to make sure that that you have the tools that you need in order to be the best person you can be. And so final tip is that have consequences. When my daughters are not doing, if I see them, doing too much, getting upset, just doing a bit more than they're supposed to as a result of not winning something or not getting their way, then there are consequences. Children need consequences. What I learned a long time ago, children want to be disciplined. When you let a child do whatever they want to do, then you give them a false sense of what's really in the world. You give them a false sense of reality. Children need to be disciplined. Children need to have some type of guidelines. They need to know that this is just not going to work. And if you continue to do this, and these are the results, this is the consequence of you doing what you're doing. And so, as you said yesterday, as you said about what happened yesterday, they got out there and they did all these things and all this happened. But what's the consequences? Or will there be consequences? Hopefully so. We don't know. But in our homes, let's have consequences set up. When our children are not doing what we expect them to do, when they're not meeting our expectations, let's have consequences in place.
That's right.
Damian, you have any final remarks?
I want to just say to you, right, this episode can apply to not just children, but to men and women as well. The resilience side of things, it's just, going through something, and how fast can we recover? Failure is a component of life. It's a component of learning. All that have done certain things did not get to it successfully. There were some pitfalls and some failures. But that don't mean you dwell in it. You dust yourself off and get back up and try it again. So a turning point for society sometimes, these things have to happen. But you know what? Society and this country will still prevail. We'll still move forward as it has been seen to be. So,
Exactly.
you know, only what's gonna stand is what's that has done for God. And I always say it's one nation under God.
So thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. If you would like more information about any of the topics that we are discussing, if you want help with just helping your families, navigate through this season of life, please reach out to me at CoachTeia.com or FamilySeasonsPodcast.com. I'm also on YouTube. We are on Facebook. We are also on Instagram and Twitter. We look forward to being a blessing to you and your family. And indeed, just remember that God created your family to win, and we're excited about being a part of that. Damian, please take us out in prayer.
Lord, once again, we've come to you this ending of a good podcast. You know, there's nothing we cannot do without you, Lord. And yes, we got a chance to see yesterday of how people respond when they don't get their way. And all don't know that winning is just a part of losing, and vice versa. But sometimes, the reality of it is, some people just don't like to lose. But they should know they can't win them all. Lord, as we talked about resilience tonight, overcoming what we've been through to move on to what's next is what it's really about. I want you to touch our hearts. I want you to touch the hearts of those who hear our hearts. And let us all be inspired, not just as Christians, not just as a nation, but as a family, brothers and sisters, under you, Lord, who is our Father. Tonight, we want to send a message of coming together for the sake of